All right. Welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shauna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, here we are again. I feel like we just cruised past that 200 real quick, fast, in a hurry.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's like
In a
we said
hurry.
hi and bye 200. But yes, we're past 200 now, but really great to be with you and dive into a few topics that have come up this week. There's
Mhm.
always something, y'all. It's always something. But let's get into our word of the week. All right. So, of course, Dr. Lisa and I find lots of inspiration from various places, but of course, here's another Instagram special for you. I was watching a brief video where there was a African American woman having some construction work done to her home. She was attempting to move a window from one wall to another to let the light into her new home. And the general contractor that she was speaking to basically told her, hey, we put it in a different place. We were kind of hoping that you didn't even notice, but we put it where we wanted to put it. And she asked the question, why? He says to her, oh, it's just better. Just don't worry your pretty head about it, right? Very condescending. And then she has to pretty much proverbially pull out the big guns and say, okay, I may not know anything about construction, but I do know about contracts. And so let me read you for filth. And now you have to go back and spend the time, money, effort, resources to go put the damn window where I asked for it the first time, right? And so the notion that the gentleman attempted to belittle her, even though she knew what she was talking about, we see it all the time, but Lisa, now we have a phrase for it. Credibility discounting. Credibility discounting. This is when women's knowledge, observations, or decisions are automatically questioned or dismissed simply because they are women. And there are way too many examples of this, Lisa. I personally have dealt with this in a lot of different places and spaces. The mechanic is the first place that I experience this when I take my car in for some work, and because of my gender, may be read as if I know nothing about cars. I have a dad, three uncles, and a grandfather, God rest his soul, all of which were mechanics. So
But you know some stuff.
know a little something, okay?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
dangerous enough to ask the right questions, Lisa. That's my point. But the assumption that because I came in as a woman and would not know anything is quite interesting. When, if we're going on gender, I've had male friends that came with me to a mechanic or went to a mechanic on their own accord and called me because they didn't know the right questions to ask, right?
Yeah.
And so we can think of lots of different places where this happens. I think, Lisa, even further beyond the definition, all we have to do is look at the gender dynamics of any industry, and you'll find it
Hmm.
there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when you
Yep.
think that, so construction sites, hospitals, boardrooms, I already mentioned mechanics, everyday relationships. Um, I've just seen it way too often where there's a gender dynamic that makes the assumption that someone doesn't know what they're talking about. Lisa, you and I, we've talked about football, American football in the past, where you were talking about learning the sport. Well,
Hmm.
it's an automatic assumption that if you and I show up to anybody's football game, that we're just clueless to what's going on,
Right. Right.
right? So haven't you seen this, in many corners of life here beyond this?
Yeah. I mean, it's different to mansplaining, right? It's actually like this person has a
Yes.
degree or education or some fountain of knowledge, but that is meaningless because you're a woman. Thus, you have no credibility in this space, even though that's an erroneous assumption, right? Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
I mean, I've seen that with academics, women faculty members who have like 25 years of experience researching a particular issue, and some upstart dude rolls in as a new faculty member and thinks that they somehow have more knowledge and experience than these, long tenured people who could do this stuff in their sleep. So Yeah.
Yeah. So, you don't know who's in a room. And the mere
Mm-hmm.
fact that you need to know who's in a room so that you know how to maneuver around them tells me a lot about your preconceived notions of folks.
Mm-hmm.
So if I think I shared this once before, but I have a great friend of mine who is a academic. She's a historian, and some comments were made in front of her that were very flippant and assumed that she knew nothing about American history, and specifically as it relates to race and American history. And she had a stack of books that she's written on the dining room table. And this gentleman said after he ran his mouth a little too much, "Oh my God, had I known." And her point was, but did you need to know to be respectful? Like, did you need to know that someone comes in with credentials? Did you need to know that? And frankly, why does it matter when there was just such a lack of respect? Like the assumption is always lesser rather than more, Lisa. Like, I would rather someone walk in and say, I assumed that Lisa knew a lot about this than say that I assumed she knew nothing. Like, why do we always assume, especially based on gender, that women
Mm-hmm.
know less when we could quite possibly know more and often do know more? That's been
Yeah,
my
but
experience.
even with your historian friend, if her kind of preeminence in knowledge in that particular field had been known ahead of time, I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
it inoculates her from this credibility discounting, right? Like she's
Oh,
still
not completely.
maybe
Mm-mm.
not this person in the example you gave, but
Mm-hmm.
there would be others who would still discount what she
Oh,
brought
for
to the table,
sure.
despite her well-known um, book writing and knowledge and teaching or whatever on the issue, right? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's not even
Mm-hmm.
it's more it feels more than the assumption. It's also the active, well, I don't care
Active.
that you have a PhD or you're a medical doctor or a pathologist or whatever, right? Like I still know more than you.
If I'm a man, I am inherently more credible
Yeah,
than you
yeah,
are.
yeah.
No matter what I know, no matter what I don't know. If I wake up as a man, then I automatically have credibility about anything that I'm speaking of.
Yeah, okay, so this isn't necessarily like a discounting
Horrible.
a woman, but there's so many examples of the man knows everything despite having no experience of it in the Trump administration, and I'm thinking about
Uh-huh.
Steve Witkoff, who's Trump's buddy, who's a real estate person, right? He's now this like
Mm-hmm.
envoy to Israel and Gaza and Ukraine and Russia. Like he has no clue, is no diplomatic background, no training in foreign relations, no training in state,
None.
like just rolls in, has meetings with Putin without a note taker, like misinterprets information, like leaves meetings with the wrong end of the stick because he doesn't know what the F he's doing, right? But he's a white dude, so like, sure, he can handle this. How hard could it be? You know?
How
Yeah,
hard could it be? Yeah, that's
right.
the whole tone of this administration. How hard could it be? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And even Elon Musk at one point admitted, "Oh, I didn't realize the level of
Yeah.
difficulty that this would take." Even he said it. Even he said it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, that's our word or phrase of the week, credibility discounting. Hopefully now you can't miss it when you hear it
Mm-hmm.
from here on out. Who gets automatic credit versus those that don't and usually earn it and still don't get the credit. How about that? So,
Mm-hmm.
all right, Lisa, get us into phase one.
Okay, so oh yeah, this is a little bit of a tidal wave of information I'm now going to throw at you, Shauna and listeners. So, okay, as we have talked about before, like every day there's something, a new something. Like the bar just gets lowered every single day, and there's a new heinous something, a new idiotic something, a new cruel something, right? So there's just been like a little bit of a cascade of things that have related to gender, sexism, women over the last several days that I wanted to raise. It began with you sending me an email about that bear versus man issue that we've talked about before, I think last year, where, women are asked, would you rather be stranded in the forest with a bear or a man? And most women choose
Yes.
bear because a
Yes.
bear is more predictable. Um,
Yes.
so then that kind of like rolled into me listening to this podcast called The Retrievals, which I think I also sent you. So there's 2 seasons. The second season is about pain that women experience through cesarean section because the block, the epidural, doesn't work, but the doctors and the I can't even say that, anesthesiologist, don't listen to the women who are saying that they can feel everything as their gut is being like cut open and babies being pulled out, etc. So I'm like, great, okay, all right. And then we've got the whole Ghislaine Maxwell issue that is just percolating, right? And a couple of weeks ago, she was transferred from the prison in Florida to a low security prison in Texas, where she's a lot more flexibility. And I just read today that maybe she gets work release, which is not allowed, as I understand it, for sex offenders. She's a sex offender, right? She was an accomplice to one of the biggest child sex trafficking, sex offenders, like in the history of the United States. But she gets moved to this low security facility, which is against the rules, but someone in the DOJ signed off on it. Anyway, right? So that's really annoying. Annoying is a very bland way to say how I feel about that. But then, listening to the Daily podcast, and it has come out in the last couple of weeks that Uber has a massive sex assault problem, which is not new, but they had previously released a figure of like 12,000 sex assaults that their clients, so people who are taking rides or drivers, had experienced from, I think, 2017 to 2022. The actual number is over 400,000. So a journalist got access, to these documents that haven't been publicly released. And so it's most likely women passengers and women drivers. If solo women are picked up outside of a bar late at night, if they are intoxicated. And so there's this whole, so it's in all of the news outlets now, related to the fact that Uber has kind of tried to downplay the problem. And one of the issues is that because Uber's business model relies on independent contractors, meaning the drivers are 1099, right? Therefore, Uber cannot be too prescriptive in the ways that their drivers work, the conditions in which they work, because that would put them in the definition of employee, which changes their whole business model, tax status, payroll.
Absolutely.
Blah, blah, blah. One of those things is to require cameras. So Uber drivers in their car have to have cameras recording video and audio. But Uber's refusing to require that. They're just recommending it, because if they did that, that would tip them over into this employee versus independent contractor. So they're putting their business model, meaning their profit, ahead of the safety of primarily women, both drivers and passengers who are experiencing these high numbers of sexual violence. And so it could be, there's just some horrendous stories, like of drivers taking intoxicated women to a hotel and raping them, to just verbal harassment, right? So it's like the whole, when we think about sexual violence, we're thinking about that on a continuum, but over 400,000. Anyway, so if that wasn't enough, yesterday, or the day before we were recording this, the State Department released its human rights report. So every year, the State Department releases a report on human rights violations globally. It's a really important report. A lot of nonprofit organizations, other government agencies, other governments look to this report from the State Department to better understand the state of human rights violations globally, right? So historically, every country, or nearly every country, has been covered in this report. It's been very, very long and very, very detailed. The report that came out on 2024 data is about 75% less than historic reports. So there's not as much in it. So if it was 100 pages before, it is now 25 pages.
Interesting.
They have basically a they've removed a bunch of human rights violations that were addressed in the report. And here is something that will be of no surprise to anyone. They have removed all of the discrimination and societal abuse related to women and children. So what is no longer in this human rights report: rape and domestic violence, female genital mutilation and cutting, other forms of gender-based violence, other discrimination based on women. For children, birth, registration, education, medical care, child abuse and neglect, sexual exploitation of children, infanticide, including children with disabilities, all removed. The only thing they've left in under children is child marriage. And then all references to violence against the LGBTQIA community, gone. All references to violence against persons with disabilities, including the institutionalization of children with disabilities, gone. So none of that is documented. And I'll include a link to this NPR article that actually has side by side the categories in the 2023 report and the categories in the 2024 report, so you can actually see
that would be helpful.
What got deleted. And apparently the United Kingdom in this new 2024 report has had an increase in human rights violations because they ban hate speech. So we're no longer reporting on rape and sexual violence of women and girls across the world, but we are saying that the United Kingdom has increased its human rights violations because it is banning hate speech in certain circumstances, right? I mean, it's just unbelievable. And one of the spokespeople for the State Department said something to the effect of, we're just aligning the report with the values of this administration. Oh, so the values of this administration then are not to give two shits about all this violence that people experience around the world, right?
Yeah, we don't care. We don't care.
So like when we talk about human rights violations, it's now this very pared down, narrow report. And some of the countries that have like very notable human rights violations, like El Salvador, as an example, I think there's like one section in the El Salvador piece that's something like no credible reports of human rights violations under this. I forget what the category is, but they've just basically wiped it. They've wiped it. So
well, of course.
Yeah, so all of these things like literally like cascaded from one day to the next. And I was like, oh, so yeah, like I felt like I knew this before, but really women don't matter at all. And then I'm not even mentioning frickin' Pete Hegseth, who I guess retweeted something from a religious figure, I think, who was that women shouldn't work or they shouldn't vote or some obscene. Anyway, so like I said, that was kind of a lot of information that I just threw at you. How's that landing on you there, Shauna?
Well, you know how I had my early introduction to assessment, data work, what's shared, what's not shared, what's buried, what's not even collected, to be honest with you. And that in and of itself is a politicized agenda. We know that. We know, I mean, think about, and we've talked about this more than once, but even more recently, there was just another statement that was basically saying that, for example, the Smithsonian and other DC museums are going to be reviewed to ensure that they align with the president's understanding of history. It's just, it's the same thing in different attire, if you will, because it is, we are only going to share what the current president of the United States wants to share, and anything else does not exist. And so, given all this in this human rights report, it's very interesting because, so this past weekend, one of our really strong pastors, she talked about during our service on Sunday, being on fire with voice, because we know that's what's going to be the resistance. Whatever that voice may be, continue to have it, because the entire goal is to silence, remove, extinguish those voices, so that then it takes literally generations to re-articulate and dig up what was already there, but it was molded in such a way that it becomes forgotten and therefore does not exist. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that to me, that's why I'm like, how selfishly, Lisa, how many different ways can we save, package, archive, make sure that our 200 plus episodes of the Unfazed Unedited podcast doesn't disappear like Timbuktu, because we want to make sure people know what was really happening
Right.
over these years of turmoil in this country. Ours as one drop in a bucket of voices. How do we make sure that we hold on to those? We've talked about book banning. We've talked about reports like this where things are being scrubbed, history's being scrubbed, things are being removed, or, even I just saw something on TV yesterday that said something to the effect of President Obama and President Biden's portraits in the White House by law can't be taken down per se, but they're put in very obscure hallways that
Okay.
nobody uses so that they're not seen. Like bullshit like that. That when it's such an intentional attack on the fullness of truth, information, and understanding, then we also need a equal and opposite strategy on ensuring that those voices remain, are heard, are loud, are amplified. And if not, our kids from now will still be trying to dig up what we knew as common information prior to this presidency. It
Yeah.
will
I mean,
take
it's,
generations,
and
generations.
so much of what the US produces internally is relied upon externally. Like we talked about
Externally.
the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that I
Mm-hmm.
think in a previous episode, but it said, I'm just reading from this NPR piece here. It says, since the
Yeah.
1970s, the US has compiled these reports on every country in the world, highlighting abuses
1970s.
such as restrictions on free assembly, unfair elections, and punishment of minority groups. None of these categories are documented in the new reports. And then further
Mm.
down, it says, these reports are highly anticipated by diplomats, activists, and journalists, and have a reputation for being even-handed and comprehensive.
Mm-hmm.
So, so it's
Mm-hmm.
like they're stripping of historical fact, of categories that are universally and internationally recognized as human rights violations, um, the manipulation of statistics. It's all, to your point, it's rewriting
Mm-hmm.
knowledge that was largely accepted as normal, standard, and
Mm-hmm.
reliable, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you contend with
Mm-hmm.
this? I mean, I don't know, these human rights reports, 50 years, and this is I'm sure there have been differences each year, but this is
Mm-hmm.
extraordinarily
Oh yeah.
dramatic, it
Oh
sounds
yeah.
like.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and so here's the other thing, which, Lisa, I think this may touch some of these topics, not all, especially when we're thinking about the theme of women in this human rights report. So I don't know if you saw it in the news, but specifically, the Gates Foundation announced that they're going to be kind of dedicating $2.5 billion towards research and development around women's health, particularly.
yeah, yeah.
And, it doesn't get into all the topics that are in the human rights report that directly are connected to women, but there are several. I mean, especially when it comes to reproductive rights, and also when it comes to a few other things around oncology and cancers in relation to women in particular. So, diabetes, gestational diabetes. I'm thinking about all the stuff that I heard when I was pregnant with the boys, endometriosis issues, menopause, all that stuff that falls under the umbrella. And that to me, especially since we haven't seen it all unfold yet, because I think all that funding goes through 2030, I believe. Um, like I said eons ago, I do think this work will continue. It's not going to look like we thought, and it's not going to come from private money. It's going to come from it's not going to come from public. It's going to come from private money,
Mhm.
from people who have deeper pockets and what they want to see supported, researched, and reported upon. Again, I know that has extreme limitations because that goes whichever way the wind blows. If Shauna the billionaire only wants to research women who wear glasses, then that's all you're going to get. But that's more than nothing that's being scrubbed
Right,
by this
right.
current administration. And so I'm kind of keeping my eyes on these announcements that emerge in regard to research, development, nonprofit work, this the philanthropic movement. I'm interested to see how they're going to reallocate and fill the gap because I always feel like it's kind of like the way a river flows. If you put a boulder in the middle of a river, the river still flows, it just flows in a different direction. I feel like the same thing is happening with some of this work, is that the funding has to flow in a different direction because the government is what it is at the moment. Limiting, yes, but still moving forward, yes. So, but I mean, come on. Did they really think nobody was going to notice 75% of the damn report was gone, Lisa? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like
goodness.
advocates and activists were anticipating cuts. Like, I think
Mm,
they just assumed everything
okay.
around LGBTQIA violence would be gone and women,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are even shocked at the degree
The degree to which, yeah.
to which it has been edited and what's been removed, that is generally accepted as a human rights violation if these things don't happen.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, so yeah, the issue is really just the erasure and oppression of women in general, but it's bigger
absolutely.
than that, right? Like it's bigger than
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
anyway,
Absolutely.
super uplifting. So
Oh, no, but I'm hearing you. And well, another thing you've got my brain thinking about too is, again, what you're mentioning about the external influence
mhm.
when it comes to outside of the US, is that does that mean that other countries are going to step up to the plate in regards to, okay, now we have to put a bit more in this because we know that the United States is not going to set the tone for this any longer,
Right, yeah,
the
maybe,
tone or the standard.
right. Yeah, so I
Because
guess there's opportunities there for other more countries with more integrity and more of a moral compass in their leadership
yeah, because we're not
to
reliable right
step
now. We're
forward.
just not.
We're not. Yeah, yeah,
We're not reliable right now, and very clear on that. We're not reliable. So I think it could be, all right, US, move out of the way because there's other
right.
opportunities here. And
Yeah,
let me be clear, that whole statement on child marriage and including that, it's telling what's being removed and it's telling what's being left in. Because there are certain movements in this country, especially extreme conservative religious movements, that are very okay with child marriage. So what's
yeah,
being
but
left in this report?
yeah,
Interesting.
but yeah, that's in conflict, right? Like they're including information about child marriage as a human rights violation. Yet there is a contingent of people in this country that support it. So
Depending on how much they want to control it. Because I'm like, look, if I can't trust what you're keeping in or leaving out, then I also can't trust the accuracy.
yeah, oh, 100%. Yeah,
Can't
100%.
trust it. So,
Yeah, to say
all
there's
right.
no credible threats of XYZ in El Salvador is just like patently false, right? Like it's just not even true.
Exactly.
Anyway,
Exactly.
sorry. Moving on.
Oh. All right. Let's get into phase two. All right. Phase two. So, Lisa, you and I both probably have been doing some of this work in microscopic ways that we did not realize that we were doing them, partially because we are very observant and we like to move the needle wherever possible. We're not folks that just complain. We definitely do what we can. And so I was very heartened to see this really cool set of graphics on Instagram that talked about different forms of micro-feminism. Micro-feminism. So exactly how it sounds, small feminist. Small feminist opportunities to demonstrate support of women, allies that support women. I just so appreciate how, again, it goes back to many, many moons ago on one of our episodes when we talked about allyship showing up in very different ways. And it doesn't always have to be marching on Washington. It could be something big or something small. And so these examples that I found on Instagram were ones that really gave me hope because I recognized and saw myself in a lot of the examples. And at the same time, I'm thinking, oh, but there's so many other ones that are in here that I need to start doing. Um, because they're not loud. They're not even, I would say, obnoxious. They are just moments to stop people, to make people think, these micro
Mhm.
actions that make people stop and think, oh, that's different from what I've heard or done before. Maybe I should rethink what I do, what I say, how I respond, how I behave. So let me give you a few examples of micro-feminism that you all could probably take some notes on, or it may give you some ideas of things to do. So, Lisa, when I was married, I cannot tell you how many times I got the mail with an invitation or something that said Mr. and Mrs. on it, including
Mhm.
from people that we know personally that would say Mr. and Mrs. Almost the entirety of my marriage, as of what, 6 months into my marriage, I was a doctor. Everybody knew that I was a doctor. 6 months in, I'm a doctor, but I'm still getting Mr. and Mrs. So I love when I see Mr. and Doctor. Sometimes
Yep,
I've seen Doctor and Mr. on mailings, but either way, I have to remind myself, oh, that is so interesting that people don't know how to handle titles because they were never meant to empower us as women, ever,
right,
ever.
right.
Another example is, for example, if someone's writing up a contract, whether you're putting a house under contract or anything that requires a contract, and there are two people's names, the woman's name being first on the contract rather than the man. So
Mhm.
fascinating because I remember when we bought our house, my name was second, and I didn't really care as long as my name was on it. But again, that's part of the problem of the
Yeah.
thinking, as long as my name is on it, right? And
Mhm.
so flipping that to make people think a little bit. Um, Even the notion, for example, when I wasn't married anymore and someone would look at one or both of the boys and say, you're the man of the house now. And I'm like, excuse me? I didn't know that we needed a man in the house. I just thought we needed
Right.
people in a house to make a home. Why do
Well,
we
and
need a man in
even,
the house?
yeah, and just like elevating a young child to an adult status because you as a grown adult woman can't handle it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much wrong with that. Yeah.
I mean, tell me exactly, layers of wrongness in that. And I know for a fact I am 47 years old and I have never heard anyone say you're the woman of the house now.
Right. Right.
Ever,
Yeah. Yeah.
ever. So the man of the house thing. Um, School, I know for certain I have complained on this podcast about getting the school phone calls where at the time dad worked from home and I went out to an office physically to work. And so logistically, dad would be closer to school or daycare than I was, but it never failed. They always called me first. I mean,
Hmm.
and even intentionally on the paperwork, we would list him first. We would even leave a note, please call dad first. Still, they would
Nope.
always call me first. Always, always. And it was frustrating to both of us because I'm like, damn it, I'm at work. And he's like, damn it, I was right here. I could have, I mean, like, yeah, happens all the time. Um, this one was a cool one that I hadn't thought about, Lisa. If you have anything that's voice command around your house, there is a woman that says she changed the voice on Alexa to men's voices instead of having the usual women's voice on there, so that kids and other people in the house weren't being conditioned to believe that they can ask a woman for something and immediately expect
Mhm.
help or a response, right? So not conditioning your kids to do certain things. I've even gotten to the place now. Matter of fact, I just said it today with the boys. I said, do y'all do this to your dad? And they had to stop and think about it. They were like, oh, we don't do this to dad. Like, I'm in the
Ah,
bathroom and have the door closed and they just walk in, Mom, I need such and I'm like, do you do this to dad? Oh, actually, we don't do this to dad. Okay, let me rethink that. Where
yeah.
is this conditioning coming from? I don't know. Um, and then in general, Lisa, I'm sure we can probably think of certain traditions here in the US, but probably elsewhere, traditions that we need to interrupt as well, such as giving the daughter away at a wedding, right?
Mhm.
I was very fortunate to witness a wedding where it wasn't the parents, excuse me, I was thinking it was the parents, it was the grandparents. The bride and the groom's parents both had passed, both sets had passed. And so all they had left were grandparents. And so the grandmother, grandfather gave away the bride, the grandmother, grandfather gave away the groom as well. So it was such a mind bender that I enjoyed because I was like, yeah, why do we do that? Like I'm almost offended by my own self and my thinking because I'm like, why do we do this crap? This is so stupid. So anyway, continuing to think about different ways that we can change and adjust these particular aspects of life that usually
Mhm.
are grossly opposite of gender equity in any sort. Um, yeah, it just has me thinking about a laundry list of things I need to do better when it comes to interrupting some of the traditions that we're just conditioned to do, right? So, Lisa, have you
Yeah,
thought of any
yeah.
micro feminist actions that you've taken?
Yeah, I mean, just to backtrack on the giving away, we've talked about this before, but
Mm,
that is
mhm.
all, the giving away of the woman by the father is all horribly sexist, derived from women as property, right?
Yes,
I own you as the father,
yes.
I'm now giving you to a man in a heterosexual relationship. And so
Mm-hmm.
any way that can get disrupted, micro or macro feminist behavior, I'm down with there.
Yes.
um but I was thinking about this. So years and years ago, like 2002, it might have been. I remember I had a little, like, I went for a job and I had to do an editing um, activity. I'm not really sure why, because the job wasn't related to editing, but I remember I went through and I marked it up. But every time they had he/she, I crossed it out and I went she/he.
Exactly. There you go. There you
This is
go.
like pretty much long before I really had a true feminist awakening, but I remember doing that, and because it just irritated me. I'm like, why do we always say
Mm,
he/she? And then whenever, like, on if I'm addressing a letter to a heterosexual couple, I will intentionally put the woman's name first.
mm-hmm.
Um, and then, for older generations that uh, you know, are used to saying, you know, um, Mr. and Mrs. Edward Brown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Mm-hmm.
woman's name is completely erased, like she just doesn't have an identity anymore in that kind of
Yeah.
construction. I would I
Yeah.
would I would never do that, right? Like I would consciously be like,
Yeah.
okay, um, you know, Shauna and Edward Brown, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
do it that way on purpose. I mean, I see that less now because obviously folks who are
Yeah.
kind of accustomed to that structure don't aren't around as much anymore because it's an older generation. But there are things like that
Yeah.
that I try to do.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting very annoyed at a management company for this rental home that I had, because they would always list Dave's name first. We had separate last names.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's H and I'm I, so alphabetically he would come ahead of me. But
Oh,
but
okay.
I
Yeah.
don't think that's why he was always listed first on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
was the
Oh,
one that
yeah.
did all I was the one that did all the management stuff and all the work. Like much like the school, right? So that school principal or school administrator calling the dad first on purpose
Yeah.
to buck that
Yeah.
it's that same stuff. And
Yeah.
I remember bringing it up to the management company who we're no longer with, but she was just like, well, I get frustrated with it too, and I'm like, well, if you get frustrated with it too and you have an awareness of it, then don't do it.
Don't do it. Exactly. Don't do it. It's not like it's autofill. You get to do, yeah.
Right, yeah. So I do,
Uh,
it's interesting because I haven't necessarily conceived of those small actions as like micro
hmm
feminisms. And I do wonder, I think this is kind of the age old question, is like, is it valuable to for each of
hmm
us individually to do these little things? Like, does that
hmm
ultimately build up to some big collective where kind of the house
hmm
topples, or is it
hmm
just performative? Is it just, not super meaningful? I don't know. Like when we think about disrupting social norms, I could
Yeah.
see an argument in both directions that, well, yeah, so you write an envelope with Shauna's name first and you make sure you say
Mm-hmm.
doctor, but what does that really do? You know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah. Well, and I've come to a jaded old place where I'm okay with, how can I say? I am okay if we have larger collective impact,
Mm-hmm.
or if we don't and we just have simply individual impact that stops and makes people think. The lack of thinking, we've talked about this a million times on this podcast, the lack of critical thinking
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
just incredible to me. And so even if that means that, a micro feminist action causes someone to pause and say, "Oh, Shauna doesn't care for that. I wonder why."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
True.
that then I'm also okay with that as well, because I've had situations where, for example, my name clearly was stated, spelled out on something, my Shauna Payne Gold, and they took it upon themselves to announce me or something in a public setting. They announced me as Dr. Shauna Gold. And I'm thinking to myself, well, we made it easy for you. It was on the damn card. Like, to
Yeah.
me, that took more energy to think about excluding part of my name than actually including it as written. So why was that an intentional choice?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
that took some energy to do that. So why was that a choice?
Yeah. I mean, I've purposefully used include, I purposefully include pain, but you sometimes do drop it though, right? So,
And unfortunately, systems have forced me to drop it sometimes because,
okay.
but let me get even more detailed with you on the name situation. So a lot of women, again, we know this is steeped in all kinds of gender-ish stuff, but just go with me there. A lot of women use their maiden name as their middle
Oh,
name once they get married or not, right?
yeah.
I didn't do that because I have a, fifth generation middle name and I didn't want to give up my middle name. And so
Yeah.
I technically have two last names
Mm-hmm.
without a hyphen.
Right.
When I put my two last names into certain systems, it doesn't allow me to list it as two last names. And if I list it with a hyphen and it needs to cross tab with another database, it kicks it out because it says it's not the same name because of the hyphen. And so the
Yes.
best way to circumvent systems is to just keep it as gold because the system doesn't work with my values.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like if I, put in, you know, pain hyphen gold and then they go check against a federal database, a state database or what have you, it'll say it doesn't find me at all, even though I'm there. And
Yeah.
so that's another issue. I had that issue with my gosh, was it my passport card or something that I was trying to get? And it's like, I have a card already. I'm trying to get the renewal. I put paying gold. They didn't find me. I just put gold and they did. And so, but that becomes the rub, going back to your point around larger change versus individual, what
Yeah.
collective change is going to happen versus individual. The individual change is just call people what they want to be called,
Right. Right.
individual, but the larger changes, the systems aren't flexible and malleable enough to do that for individuals, even though individuals constitute the whole.
Yeah.
Maddening, maddening. I mean, we have that problem. Well, we can go to that problem with lots of things, whether it's name, whether it's gender, whether it's any demographic that we select. And, you know, I remember this specifically in higher ed where we knew that we wanted to be as inclusive as possible when it came to demographics. But when we were working with a federal database, the database didn't allow for certain things.
Mm.
So are you as radically inclusive as possible and miss out on funding for the very people you're trying to serve?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or do you restrict yourself so that you can serve those folks? Messy conundrum every time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's, yeah, I think there is tension perhaps between micro-feminism or micro anti-racism or micro whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
shifting these larger systems, these larger wholes. But I think that there
Mm-hmm.
is value because there's a consciousness about it, right? Like I see the tradition and the history here as something um
Mm-hmm.
that feeds into a bigger whole of women's kind of reduced or oppressed status in society. So
Yeah.
I am going to chip away at that, even if
Mm-hmm.
it just the ripple is small. But I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
did that. I was at CrossFit a few months ago, and some guy, he's a new dad, and he made some comment about he was, I don't think he said babysitting because that is also very annoying to me. Like you are on
Oh,
your
obnoxious. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but he said like looking after his kid, but he didn't know like all the things that he needed to do or something, so he had to call his wife
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And I think I don't know this person very well, but I just was like, I couldn't let it lie. I was just like, well, I feel like that's kind of your responsibility to know those things, right? It's not just your wife's responsibility. And he kind of like grunted, and I pissed him off.
Mm-hmm.
But he
Oh,
did.
yeah.
I mean, I'm going to think optimistically that maybe that little kernel buried itself somewhere, that little micro-feminist kernel buried itself in his brain, and he will perhaps start the march toward like not relying on his wife to know all the things about their child, and he will be as educated as her about the idiosyncrasies and needs of the kid, right? So
Look, sometimes ignorance is bliss. I mean, as long as I don't know, then many times I don't have to do something in household set up that way. Just saying. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
right, right.
I've seen it happen too many times. I don't know how to do XYZ. So as long as I can maintain not knowing, then nobody will ask me to do it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Winning, winning. So I do think some of that is what is it called? Learned helplessness. I think that's what it's called. Learned
Yeah,
helplessness.
yeah,
Where it's like, I don't know. I don't because what you just did was a criticism on his fatherhood, and most men, based on gender dynamics and the history of gender in this country, most fathers are mentored, modeled, trained to assume that fatherhood stops as soon as you know what happens. No, it doesn't
right,
stop there. It continues
right.
on for a lifetime. And so that's the conditioning, whereas motherhood is until we
Yeah,
take our last breaths. It's like, nah,
indeed, indeed.
nah, 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 that's not okay. I'm very grateful that that's not the case for my son's father at all, but that's not the norm. I know that's not the norm. And so,
Yeah.
but that feeds Lisa into what we've seen in a lot of social media too around, oh, look at my wonderful husband, partner, what have you, that's doing all these things. And I love, now this is more of macro feminism. I love all the comments from women underneath, like, oh, you mean to tell me you did an entire Instagram video and TikTok showing a man doing what he's supposed to do by his own kids? Slow
Yeah.
golf clap. Slow golf clap. Like
Yeah.
I see them all the time and I'm like, oh, it's like, fatherhood in the wild. Okay, you're doing like half of what women do every single day without a
Right.
TikTok video.
I know, right? Like,
Congratulations.
yeah, if we were to post TikTok or Instagram videos of the things that women did as mothers, I mean, that's all that would be on. That would be the entirety of the reels and the TikToks, right? Like, that would be it because, yeah,
Oh,
they
well,
do
no, no,
all the
no.
things.
Maybe look, that's the reason why there aren't videos. I mean, there are obviously, but there aren't overwhelming videos of that kind of stuff because we're too busy actually doing it to take a video of what we're doing. Like it's not something to be celebrated. My girlfriend says all the time, I do not applaud fish that swim. I'm not going to
Oh, I
celebrate
like
what you're
that.
supposed to be doing.
I like
Not
that.
going to do it. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, we're not going to do that. Come on, y'all. Let's not do that. I mean, and let me be clear. I do appreciate that men who have normalized equitable roles in the household. I appreciate them highlighting what they do to interrupt the men that don't. I get
Right.
that piece of it. And at the same time, as a woman, I'm like, oh Lord. You just basically gave us a glimpse of what a large percentage of women do every single day, as if it's a huge celebration.
I know, right? We're not going to give you a medal.
No, we're
Yeah.
not going to give you a medal for that one. We do not applaud fish that swim at all. You're doing what you're supposed to do. How about that? Congratulations. Golf clap. Golf clap. So anyway, oh, but keep on keeping on. I mean, Lisa, I'm still gonna I'm with you. I'm questioning the macro impact, but still supporting the micro
Right,
action.
right.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm certainly with you on that. So, all right, well, let's wrap it up for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening in. You can certainly reach us on all of your social media and podcast apps at Unfazed Unedited with brackets around the first un. You can email us at info@unfazedpodcast.com or visit our website, unfazedpodcast.com, to find both the old and the new shows. So if you like this week's episode, please remember to subscribe, follow, leave a review, share with your friends, coworkers, or any other micro-feminist in
Yeah.
this phase of your life. Until
Perfect. I
next
love it.
time.
All right. See you next week.